Hey,
I hope.
hey, how's it going?
You hear me?
Yes, can you hear me all right?
Let's see. I think for some reason I can't hear you. Can you? Aha! There you are.
Can you hear me now? Okay, cool.
Nice. Awesome. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Pretty good.
I like the
Uh,
background.
oh, thanks. I'm in my messy room, so.
Gotcha.
So I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to be with our group, Women in Audio. We're a lot of aspiring engineers and current engineers, so
Mhm.
it's really amazing to be able to speak with someone who's a professional in the industry, especially a woman representing. So,
Yes, not a lot of us.
so I know you've worked with so many different kinds of artists, indie artists, but on the alternative singer-songwriter, but also the rock spectrum, like
Mhm.
Royal Blood. So
Yeah.
I was hoping you could just tell us a little bit about your background and how you became interested in audio and
Okay.
how you kind of really fell in love with the mixing process.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm pretty sure we all got into it kind of the same way, being musicians and just recording ourselves and learning that we actually enjoy that part of the side of the music creation process just as much as the actual music process, or at least that's what happened for me. I realized that I just really loved um, being able to create different sounds and explore different textures that you can get with recording things different ways. And that's how I fell in love with that part of the industry. So I went to school at Berklee College of Music for audio engineering and music production. And that's where I just kind of learned where my passions were more specifically in working with bands, working with artists, kind of it's a whole spectrum of things. But ever since I graduated from Berklee, I've been out in LA where I've been working freelance. So I work at a variety of different studios for a variety of different clients. So I love it because every day is super different and I never really know what I'm going to be doing, but it keeps things really exciting.
That's
And
awesome.
I love just like never knowing who you're going to be in the room with. And
Yeah,
sometimes it's
definitely.
great, sometimes it's not so great, but there's always a good story usually that comes out of it.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so yeah, that's an overview of my background.
Did you grow up loving music, a specific band that kind of got you?
I grew up, yeah, definitely loving music. I played piano, violin, and I sung all my life. My taste in music really changed a lot throughout growing up. So I've pretty much loved most genres of music at this point in my life. But I realized that something that I never really realized is I always loved records that sounded really unique and sounded really individual to the artist rather than something that sounded the exact same, you know. So I realized that I was always paying attention to the production and the engineering and the mix, even though I didn't necessarily realize it.
Awesome. Do you have any kind of tricks that you've discovered or that you've created for yourself to make the process go a little easier, a little smoother?
Are you talking about mixing specifically?
Yeah.
For me, I mean, everyone's different, but for me, having a really organized session really helps me. Personally, whenever I get a session from someone else, that's the first thing that I have to do is have it organized because even just visually to be able to not even really look at something, but know what it is really helps to just go with your first instinct. Like if you hear something and you really want to fix it or get it to sound a different way, it sucks to have to sort through a session and try to figure out what's what. So for me, that's always the first step is to have things organized. And then another great thing to have just ready to go is a good mix template so that you can just import your kind of go-to settings and you're already at a place where everything's sounding a little bit closer to where you hear it, you know, and that way if you want to reach for something, a plugin that you really like, it's super quick rather than having to search through the list of plugins, you know, your reverb's already right there, ready to go.
Right.
So those are a couple things that just right off the bat I usually have
Cool.
to help start the process. Yeah.
That's great. And so I just wanted to say we are now live in our Facebook group. So
Okay. Cool.
welcome to everybody in both. So I'll be looking at both in both places for questions in the comments. And do you have any kind of favorite plugins that you've used that simulate analog gear, or are you more kind of analog versus in the box?
Definitely a combination depending on the project. I love being able to use analog gear. And so if I'm in the situation where I can, that will always be my first choice. So if I'm in a studio, I hate seeing studios go to waste. And so many times the big studios, if you're in there, a lot of artists don't fully take advantage of that.
Okay.
So I am the type of engineer that will take the extra 5 minutes to like run things through a real LA2A rather than just pulling up a plugin when you're in the studio with it, you know? So that's always my go-to. But I mean, everyone loves the UAD plugins. Those are great for analog simulation. Those are definitely top notch. But
Awesome.
I personally am a big pedal user, especially when it comes to mixing. So I love running things through pedals, especially when it comes to effects, because you can get lots of really interesting sounds that it's sometimes harder to dial up on pedal or on plugins. So,
awesome. How has COVID affected your work versus, you know, being in the studio and then working from home?
At first, it was really hard. There were a couple months where I was definitely slower, and I ended up just taking projects that I might not normally have, which honestly, I'm grateful that I had those. But luckily, within, I would say, like 4 to 5 months, things have picked back up. And right now, I feel like I'm busier than ever. So it's been good. I've been lucky for that. It's definitely a challenge, though, you know. Trying to stay safe and make sure everyone else is safe. But
yeah, for sure.
One thing, a blessing in disguise is, you know, just playing around with like, I've had sessions where we've recorded vocals with a mask on just for the effect of it, you know, so it's kind of funny to just take advantage of the situation and like, you know, do things you might not normally do.
Yeah. Are you seeing more people dive into this world as well, being at home and trying to test out
definitely
other things? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think everyone's trying to learn how to record themselves at home right now. And hopefully that doesn't take away our jobs.
No, of course
hopefully
not.
they don't get too good at it. No, but I think people are definitely embracing that, which is awesome, because I think that especially vocalists, if you can learn how to get a really good sound at your own house, I feel like you're always more comfortable there. So if you can just take advantage of your situation and, you know, make the most of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice to aspiring engineers coming up right now?
That's a tough one. I mean, especially as women, I think it's extra tough for us. The one thing I will say is that overall, I've had a really positive experience being a woman in the industry. There are people who are definitely not used to seeing us around studios and get a little bit, you know, just have an interesting reaction. But I would say overall, people, especially in our generation and the younger generation, are really excited to see women working in audio. And every time, pretty much, I would say 95% of the sessions I'm in, someone says how awesome it is to see a woman as an engineer. And, you know, so it's overall really positive. So my advice would be to just, I've always talked with other women about it, but it seems like the first hour or two that you're in a situation with someone new, you really have to be on your A game, like no mistakes in your first couple of hours. You have to prove yourself a lot more than normal other people. But once you do prove yourselves, people are really excited and they'll hire you again.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you have a standout experience from your career that you kind of look at or think about a lot and think, oh, that was the moment or a moment when I really felt confident in the job?
That's a good one. I think I remember one of my favorite sessions that I ever did. It was this writing camp. It was for about 9 days. It was in 2019. It was sponsored by Adidas, and there was another label going into it together. And they got a bunch of really great artists together, and they had this whole place booked out with 5 studios, and it was like hundreds of people the whole week. And to me, like, I think the moment when I saw the list of artists who were going to be there made me really excited, because a lot of them were artists that I've loved for years. So that to me was like one of the most exciting moments.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So if you're ready, I can make you the host.
Okay.
And if you want to share your screen, we can kind of jump in.
Sure,
And
yeah.
then I'll be, I can either write in the chat or we can use the reactions for raise hands, and then I'll be checking in for Facebook too. So
okay. And did you want me to pull up a session that I've worked on? I'm not
Sure.
entirely sure what.
Yeah. Whatever makes you most comfortable.
Okay.
I think.
The only thing is I'm not a huge Zoom user, and so I'm not sure. Do you want like the audio from a Pro Tools session or something? Because that is something I'm maybe not sure how to do.
So I think we can figure that out with setup, and then the playback will be the Zoom option.
Let me
let's
open
see.
something up and see. See what we can get working.
So I'm gonna make you the host.
Okay.
There you go.
That's the one lucky thing about this past year is I haven't gotten stuck on a lot of Zoom meetings. So I'm still relatively a Zoom noob.
It's fun. It's all the time now. Let's see.
All right. Cool. I believe my screen is sharing. You seeing that?
Yes, it is.
Okay, cool. Session. I'll open up this mix that I did not too long ago.
Awesome. And then do you want to test audio real fast?
For the session?
Yeah.
I will once it's open. It's almost there.
We can see what's going on.
All right, let's see. Let me try it. Let me know if you're hearing anything from the session.
I'm hearing.
Probably just through my mic.
I think through your mic.
Okay.
So do you have in setup and playback? And then the playback engine option for Zoom audio?
I'm not seeing that. Yeah, I don't see that showing up. Is there something I need to download for that maybe?
No, it should be just, let's see. It's not, is it Pro Tools?
This is Pro Tools, yeah.
So definitely should be able to. So if you go in, so there's nothing setup and playback engine.
I mean, I'm monitoring through the Universal Audio Thunderbolt right now, which is the Apollo, but I'm not seeing the Zoom option.
Let's see, maybe in the Zoom preferences, audio, speaker.
Yeah, it's still saying Universal Audio Thunderbolt.
So I'm wondering if UA just doesn't have that option like like Pro Tools just in Pro Tools does.
Maria Clancy just said, when you click the share screen, make sure that the box that says optimized for computer audio is checked.
Okay, how do I do that? You might tell.
So if you hit share screen, so you might want to stop your screen share right now and start over. So hit share screen, and then there should be two little boxes at the bottom. One might say like optimized for computer video, something that says also something about sharing computer sound. Do you see either of those?
I'm in the advanced, and it says computer audio.
So that's just going to share your audio.
Okay.
Don't go to advanced. Go to the tab to the left of that. I think just like the regular
portion of screen. Okay. Okay. So, share sound. There we go.
Yay.
I think
hopefully that works.
Okay. Let's see. Why is my password not working?
Oh no.
Okay. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
It just quit Pro Tools, so let me restart that and see if that helps.
Yeah, it always will do that with Zoom.
Oh, Zoom.
That happens to me every time I open a session up in class, and I always forget. Well, I just always forget to like do the Zoom share, and then in order to do that, it makes me quit the program and start over.
Gotcha.
So it's every time.
I feel like everyone's an expert on Zoom right now, but just not me.
I know. No.
Like I don't even know how to share or change my background. I wish I did, but
I really just downloaded a background because I was like too messy. Let's see. While that's loading, do you want to talk a bit about the session, like what it is, what genre?
Yeah, sure. This is an artist called Deer Pilot, and it is kind of like an alternative rock group, but this song is more acoustic based. It's a little slower, but lots of sound design, lots of like ambient stuff in this one. So it was a super fun mix.
Very cool.
Let's test it out. Let me check my playback. Zoom audio device. There we go.
Woohoo!
And now it's gonna make me restart again.
Yep. Every time. So what are the components in this mix?
Let's see. There's lots of guitars, acoustic and electric, some full string.
Cool. Oh wow.
Some bass, some percussion, some kind of not normal percussion. There's some like boom back, and I'm trying to remember what else.
Whoa.
Yeah, there's some interesting elements in this one, so I can show you that.
Cool.
Vocals. Lots of what else? I feel like there was something else strange in this one. Are you guys still seeing my screen?
No, you have to screen share.
No, okay, sorry.
No problem.
And now? Yeah? Cool. All right, so yeah, there's lots of synths, lots of like weird sound effect-y things in here. There's some vocoder too. Let's see what else. So automatically you'll see how OCD I am about session organization right off the bat. Color coding is like my favorite thing in the world. So yeah, there's a bunch of percussion. We got synth bass, acoustic guitar, 12-string, synths, pads, chimes, vocals. Yeah.
Awesome.
Let's see if the sound is working. Yeah.
Yay.
Awesome. All right. So yeah, what do you want me to do? Just kind of play it, or just?
Yeah, just like do you want to just walk us through kind of what you did to mix it, steps through the mixing process?
This one was a little bit more involved because I was also producing it, so there were mixed things happening from day one. So a lot of it was arrangement in this mix because there are a lot of elements that we really used to build the song. And I mean, yeah, I can just play you a little bit so you can kind of hear more about what I'm talking about. I'll play it starting with like the first pre-chorus. How about that? Though it might be hard at times, it might break us down. No, there's nothing that can come between you and me. It's only distance. Give it all to see you smile. So yeah, that's a little sample. Any questions right off the bat, or?
That's gorgeous, by the way.
Thanks.
That sounds so good.
Good.
Yeah, I'm just kind of interested in how you stacked up vocals and how how you panned things and what your approach to automation was.
Yeah, there's definitely lots of automation going on. Are you all mostly Pro Tools users or Logic?
I think we're across the board. I use Pro Tools personally. I know a few others do here as well, but yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, so lots of automation. Not all of it is showing right now, but you can definitely see it on the vocals already. Like if you look at that, that's a delay that's going on. Definitely, I'm a big vocal person, so I love vocal layers. This one is actually honestly pretty light in terms of vocal layers. But for the lead vocal, there's always 2 going on at a time. And they're meant to kind of be equal. You can see they're about the same volume. And then there's 2 additional layers that come in the chorus. And those are panned almost hard left and hard right. And then we've got some vocal pairs. So my pairs are usually always panned pretty much hard left and hard right, unless it's something like this one needed to be in the center. So that one's there. Let's see what else. I have quite a lot of effects going on the vocals right now. Can you see the mix window now? Yeah, okay, cool. So let me get this condensed a little bit. Yeah, so I have lots of sends going on. I've got delays, reverbs. I think I printed vocals through pedals a lot for this one. So if not vocals, then I definitely printed a lot of things through effects like these synths, which I really love using. This one pedal, it's called an Eventide H9. If anyone's ever heard of it before, it has hundreds and hundreds of really cool effects that you can just run through the pedal and then right back into Pro Tools, which is super fun for mixing. Yeah, any other questions?
You said you use those vocals, you pan them to the far right and left. Is that just for this particular project, or do you have a reasoning for that?
Can you say the first part of that again?
When you said that you have your vocals panned to hard right and left.
Yeah, it really depends. A lot of times I will actually have them a little staggered. Like I have some of these hard left and hard right, some of them at like 50%. Usually I'll kind of give it a spectrum, so like a 10, 20, 30. It depends on how many vocals there are and what the texture is. A lot of the times with background vocals, I'll also have it going to a doubler. So whether that's like the Soundtoys Microshift or some other doubler plugins are really great, and I'll have that so that there's actually a little delay happening so that you get the effect of another vocal layer or however many vocals you're sending. So if you have 4 vocals sending to it, it sounds like 8, and then I'll just put the panning the opposite way, so the effect is actually opposite. So it just sounds a little bit deeper. It sounds a little fuller, which I really like having for background vocals, and sometimes lead vocals as well. It just depends.
And my other question is also because I had another engineer tell me that he loves just doing raw vocals. He doesn't really, his approach for him said he didn't really like using lots of effects on vocals just because he thinks it takes away from like the imagery and the texture of the raw vocals. What's your take on that? Because you just said that, like, I love that you said that you love playing with vocal pedals. What's your aspect on it? What do you enjoy about using pedals, and what do you use it for, like, when you create?
It really depends on the song. A lot of the times it just depends on the artist too, what their preferences are. A lot of times artists will have preferences of using super drenched reverb on everything, on all their vocals, and that's just the sound that they like. But some artists like it totally dry, and you just have to understand what they're going for and what the sound that they're going for is. Because sometimes, although I love effects and I love reverbs and all that, like sometimes a song just calls for dry vocals or raw vocals, and you just have to kind of, I think it's almost more bold to do dry vocals because your vocals are especially if it's your own vocals, then they're the most front and center, and there's no covering up anything from them, you know? Right. So honestly, I love both. I find that it's rare to find an artist who wants completely dry or raw vocals, but it really depends. I'm down for either.
I'll say it's interesting because the band that we're going to be recording here soon, I definitely feel like we should use a lot of raw vocals, but I do like the fact that there's so many options to choose on vocals. I just think it's nice to know that just to know that there's no, like, because everything's subjective, but I feel like sometimes people will tell you that, like, there's no rules, but
there's no rules at all.
Yeah. But sometimes even when I'm starting out with recording, I really don't know where to go with myself. Even so, now I have so many options, what really works for whatever project you're working on.
Yeah, definitely. I think there are also ways to do like a happy medium, because a lot of times people don't, especially artists, they don't know the terminology to say what they mean. So they may say that they want something raw sounding, but they really don't. They want something that's not super drowned out. They just don't know really what the difference there is. So a lot of times there's a way to have a super subtle effect happening without it necessarily being audible. For example, I'll have a slapback going on sometimes, like a super filtered slapback, so you're not really hearing either the top or the bottom of that vocal delay, but it's just a layer that you hear, and it adds more depth to the vocal. Or even just like a small room reverb really helps to just add like a little bit of a layer of space without like overcrowding it at all. So there's different levels for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question just about the lead vocals that you have? You have it like dubbed. Is that two different takes that are
That's
just
two
like
different takes.
okay?
Yeah.
Cool.
That's
How do you? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go. You ask.
I was gonna ask. So that's something that's a technique that I've tried before on my own, and I'm just wondering how do people like deal with small changes of like vibrato at the tail end of a vocal run or something like that.
It really depends on how fine tuned you want to be. A
Yeah.
lot of people go for a more natural sounding, non-edited version of that effect. And a lot of people are really, really good at exactly matching their own voice. Like
Right.
I've worked with artists who can sing the exact same thing twice, and you don't even have to sing to the first take. It will just automatically sound exactly the same.
Right.
It depends on the artist a lot, but if you're really going for that sound where there's no differences and it almost sounds like one vocal, then it's always best to comp one take and get it sounding exactly how you want to sound, and then do takes to that, and then just comp the double and try to get takes that sound exactly the same.
Okay.
It can be a tedious process, but that's what vocals are for the most part, just tedious sometimes, depending on the sound. Yeah.
And the pedals that you were talking about, do you only use, I'm sure you don't only ever do one thing, but like, do you usually use vocal pedals or do you ever experiment with like running vocals through guitar pedals or,
All the time. I mean, I rarely only ever use vocal pedal. I don't think I just have I have maybe one vocal specific pedal. The rest are guitar pedals.
And that's the Eventide.
And yeah, like the Eventide it's not necessarily only meant for guitar. That's one of its main uses, but a lot of times it's used for keyboards or even vocals. It's just a really versatile pedal. But yeah, I will not hesitate to use any pedal on anything, especially vocals. There are just some really crazy pedals out there that they'll give you something that you didn't even know you were looking for. They'll just give you a sound and you're like, wow, I didn't know this mix needed that. But like there's just some really cool textures that you can get. Like there's a Mellotron pedal, so if you run vocals through that, like you can run a single vocal through a Mellotron pedal and get like a weird choir sounding thing, which can be awesome for background vocals. Or you can really get as weird as you want. And that's why I do love the H9 for that, the Eventide H9, because they have some of the weirdest sounding effects I've ever heard. So yeah.
Sweet. Thank you.
Hope, I really love layering vocals. I was wondering if you could kind of walk through that process, maybe bypass and then kind of say like why you did what you did on them.
Okay. Like effects wise
or both. Yeah, effects and then why you chose the layers that you did.
Okay. Yeah, so I can kind of start with the lead vocal if you want.
I will send flowers to your doorstep and send you love notes every
looks like, yeah, for this I have a long plate going on, a slap back, a long delay, which I think is automated, so it only comes in during certain phrases. Not sure what this bus is off the top of my head, and then another long delay. So those are the effects going. Then I'm running them each through branch out compressor, a Pultec EQ, which are great UAD ones. And then I'm running the double through slightly more. Sometimes I like to compress the double a little bit more. Just it's almost like a parallel compression, except it's not the exact same. So it's the same effect though. Definitely some de-essing going on. I'm sure you guys have heard of this plugin. If not, it's one of the most popular plugins right now. It's super fun to use. It has kind of like vinyl-y lo-fi sounding effects on it, which I use a ton in my mixes. Those are kind of some of my go-tos for vocals. I use Neutron a lot too, which really helps you like dive in and get really specific when it comes to vocals. It has a bunch of different things you can do with it. Looks like I was using some little altar boy too, which is really fun. I'm sure you guys have used that before. Vocal synth isotope. Looks like I was adding some like weird vocoder layers. Yeah, those are kind of some of my main ones. The Hall Shimmer is really fun for background vocals. Yeah, these are the effects that I have going on over here. Some micro shift, like I was saying, to kind of widen your vocal image. Some tremolo, lots of delays, reverbs, stuff like that. Any questions about anything there?
Oh, I've actually never used the little altar boy. Can you talk
Cool.
about a little bit what that does?
So that is a pitch shifter, which it's one of the most popular ones out there, but there are some other really great ones too. This one definitely adds its own sound to it. It can sound a little bit too affected if you're going for something that sounds more natural. There are other ones that I would recommend, but this one, let's hear what I was doing with it. I was probably adding an octave. Yeah, no, I was adding an octave up. Yeah, so
I will send flowers to your doors, though it might be hard at times.
There's my slow mode over here.
Though it might be hard.
So a little chipmunky going on. And that is just the same vocal.
It might break us down.
Oh, it's a double. It's not the exact same, but it's the same part, an octave up. Yeah, you can do some really cool things with that plugin.
That's awesome. That was so cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Could you maybe bypass the plugins and like bring them in?
Yeah, for sure.
Just to see what they do.
You want to hear that on the lead vocal or the?
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great.
Let's see. So I'll bypass the effects and the regular plugins.
Though it might be hard at times.
So de-esser first.
It might break us down.
Depending on the mic, sometimes S's are a huge problem in a mix. So I definitely find myself using a lot of de-essing. This is with the compressor.
Though it might be hard
like this one's getting compressed kind of a lot, which sometimes is cool, sometimes is not. Depends on
it might break us down.
And this is an EQ. It's kind of a go-to EQ. I'm just adding some top to it.
Though it might be
taking away a little bit 1.5. That's pretty much it that's going on with this one. And then
it might break us down.
Plate.
Though it might be hard at times. Though it might be.
Some of these are automated, so they might not be going on right now. Let's check that. Yeah, those ones are kind of coming in and out on phrases, but that's what I like to do a lot with delays. Is it's not just gonna be constantly on. It's gonna come in only at the ends of the phrases that you want it to come in on, or else it can just get really overwhelming. Yeah, that's the lead vocal.
Very cool. So how did you make it so that you could only automate the delay instead of the whole thing?
Yeah, so I just have the delays going separately on sends here. So let's pick one to look at. If we look at my long delay, which is what I've called it, if you have that going separately to an aux, which is going on down here, then you can just change your view here to show your long delay automation. It will show your level automation, and then you can see exactly what I'm sending when to, this is all the delay send. So you'll see that I have it coming in. Like usually I won't send the very beginning of a word, especially if there's an S, because I hate hearing S's in my delays. So I'll get rid of those. And then it will kind of increase within a phrase. It really depends. It looks like I was doing that less than I normally would probably, but that is definitely a technique that I use a lot. Does that make sense?
Cool. Yeah. Thank you. Cool. So do you want to move to the background layering?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, let's see what's going on. I'll solo these ones. We'll go with this first layer.
Though it might be hard at times, it might break us down.
So right now, there's not a ton happening other than effects to the background vocals. It's just being sent to a plate, which I'm using, what am I using? Probably Little Plate by Sound Toys, which is one of my favorites. Or it's also going to the RC20, which is a classic of mine. This one, I really love. It just adds like, with this on, it adds a little bit of a tube sound to it, as if I'd run it through something, a piece of gear with tubes in it. Adds just some really like nice warm mid-range, which is really nice for vocals. I can play those dry if you want.
It might break us down.
Yeah. And you'll see that I like chopped out an S or something here.
Hard times.
Which I think the S's were just too overwhelming, so sometimes you just gotta take them out. Let's see what else. We have this was one of my favorite parts of the song. We had this vocoder going on. So that is going to, it looks like it's going to a couple reverbs. This one is also being sent through a tremolator, which is the Sound Toys one. So the reverb itself is has the tremolo sound on it, but the lead vocal doesn't. And then this is another delay that's happening on it. So I'll play you the dry version, which is. You'll see. So then with the stuff on. Super fun and ambient sounding. Yeah.
That is nice. Awesome. And then how do you choose parts? Like, do you have any kind of method there as far as choosing what to layer on top of the lead?
I don't ever have a method for it. It's just kind of listening through and seeing what would sound good there. And I love vocoders, so that's always something that I love to layer into a song if possible. Even if you're not really hearing it, it's kind of a fun texture, especially if you have lots of background vocals going on and you really want like a thick background sound. It's fun to have a vocoder under there, and you sometimes don't even notice it's there, but it adds like a really cool texture. But yeah, there's not really a method for me other than just thinking about the song as an arrangement and trying to build up sections with vocals a lot of the time.
Nice.
And using them to transition between sections is also really useful.
Yeah, nice. Do you ever run all of these choices past the artist first, or do you make the decisions for like layering and everything and then send it?
Well, I mean, when we're recording, that's usually when the decisions are made. And I love being able to mix things that I've recorded because my decisions were in the recording process. So it makes it a lot easier to know what the intention was and be able to get that intention going already when we're working on the song for the first time. A lot of the time, depending on the artist, we'll both have ideas during the recording process. So we'll be able to just have an idea, try it out, see if it works, and then decide, does this need a layer? Does this need 4 layers? You know, like what's needed there. And a lot of the times we'll even decide about effects, or we'll run things through effects while we're recording just to hear what it's going to sound like. So it really depends on the song, but sometimes I will, like if I'm mixing something that I didn't record, I will layer things that maybe the artist hadn't layered, because oftentimes, especially if it's background vocals or like a part during the chorus, you don't even really hear it. It's just something you feel, and it's an extra texture that they might never notice, but it really helps like lift up that section. So
nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Can we see some of the percussion that you said was a little bit different?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, let's see what we've going on. So we've got congas, udu, doumbek, 2 doumbeks, a rain stick, a flute, woodblock, shaker, and cymbal swells. So let's hear that. Fast forward a little bit. So it looks like I have all the percussion going to this one bus. You guys can probably hear my dog scratching at the door trying to get in. Let's see where the percussion is doing that. So yeah, I have the percussion going through a lot of things right now. Going through this compressor, it's going through the RC20 as always. This EQ, which adds really nice high-end neutron also, which helps with many things. Looks like I have it going to a couple reverbs. Let's see what it was. Some delays, Valhalla, a room plugin. So kind of a variety of things. It gets a little funky at the end too. Yeah, that one's fun.
Wow, cool. I see a raised hand. Is there still a question?
I have a quick question about effects on these tracks. I understand, like I've always heard that, reverb should always be on a sent to an aux channel for multiple reasons, including like saving your CPU, and just wanting to have like the unaffected track, like audio still part of the mix, etc. And then obviously like compressors should always be an insert instead of a send. So can you just talk about like for your practice specifically, or like your work specifically, do you have a general guide of like these flavors of effects are always, or not always, but these I'm generally going to put on an insert versus these flavors of effects I'm usually going to send to buses?
Honestly, I feel like my general approach is to just not regard any rules, because I was taught that there were rules, and the more I've been in the industry and not in school, I've realized that there are none, and to play by the rules really limits yourself. So although yes, that is if you were to read an audio engineering book, they would say that. I don't think there are any situations where you have to put the reverb on a bus and you have to put the compressor on it as an insert. Like there are definitely things that are better for each situation, but if something calls to be super drenched in reverb and you know you're not going to want to mess with the dry signal too much, then put the reverb on an insert. Like if that's what it calls for in the project, then I'd say go for it. And yeah, I really think that you should just embrace not sticking to rules, because that will really help you just be creative and try a bunch of different things, because honestly, every teacher that's out there will probably tell you the way that you should do things, but the way that the music industry is right now is people are really trying to embrace things that sound different and sound like things that they've never heard before, and so you're not going to get that by just sticking to whatever rules you've learned.
Yep.
So I think just if you hear something, then go for it. And if you are stuck on ideas, just try a bunch of different things in a way that you might not normally have done it, and then see what happens.
Cool. And then would you be willing to go into your like lead vocal compressor, for instance, and just like dig into it for us a little bit and talk about I always struggle with knowing how to use compressors.
Yeah, for sure. So I love, let's see what I was using on this one. So yeah, so my lead vocal is usually always, especially if there's a double or a triple or whatever on it, it's always being compressed on its own in its own track, and then it's also being sent to this bus, which is all the lead vocals. So that's also being compressed again there. So it really depends. Sometimes the mix doesn't need to sound super compressed, but for this particular one, the lead vocal, we really wanted it to sound really kind of not too dynamic. Like it needed to kind of be in its own spot the whole time and be really present. So it was being pretty compressed during this mix. So this compressor, it's the Fairchild. It's a really awesome piece of analog gear, which UAD does a really good job of emulating. This one I really like because you can compress things a lot without it sounding too compressed. So you can really like get in there and do some dynamic control without it sounding like it's being squeezed to death. So I'll solo that for you.
I give it all to see.
So here's the gain reduction right now. Right now,
I give it all to see your face.
Fairchild is a kind of a weird plugin when it comes to attack and release. They're all like these variable settings. And then I have it dialed actually right now at a 50% mix. So you're hearing 50% of the compressed sound and 50% of the uncompressed sound, which is super helpful because then it really adds like this layer of less dynamic range with your attack and release kind of helping to make things sound more natural. So I'll bypass that for a second.
Give it all to see you smile. I give it all to see your face.
Let me play it compressed again.
I give it all to see your face.
See how just even the softer phrases are just a little bit more level with everything. Then looks like I usually don't do this, but I have it going twice to this one compressor. That's where all the lead vocals are going. So when I have everything in at once, everything's being compressed the same way.
And how I long for your embrace.
That one's a softer compressor, so it's just kind of barely nudging things.
Though it might be hard at times.
Yeah, like I said, the doubles and triples are being compressed.
And it might break us down.
That one sounds a little bit more lo-fi because I wanted it to be more of just a texture rather than like a very present vocal, if that makes sense. I'll play
and how I long for your embrace.
Verses.
And how I long for your embrace.
So yeah. Did you have any more specific questions about compression? I can't hear you.
So what the plugin that you were just showing us, the UAD, I think it was the UAD2.
Yeah, it's the 1176.
That okay, 1176. Oh yeah, that's like the native one that comes with it, right?
And some of these do. There's different versions of this one. I don't believe that this silver one comes with it, but it
okay. Well, I'll look into these and then.
Yeah. Some of the ones I really recommend are the Fairchild. This is the 670. There are a couple different versions. What other ones do I recommend? There's lots of really great UAD ones. It really just depends on what you're going for.
Cool. How does it compare to like the stock 76?
It depends on how technical you want to go. I'm not personally one of those people who like refuses to use the stock one because the UAD one is better. I really feel like whatever helps you get what you're going for quickest and easiest and sounds great is the one to use. So if you like, there are so many different 1176 emulations out there. People have their favorites, and some of them sound great, some of them sound slightly different. It just depends on what your personal preference is, honestly.
Nice. Yeah, I'm liking the Waves one right now. I think it does a pretty good job.
Yeah, Waves has some great plugins. I don't use all of their stuff, but I have some go-tos. Like RVox is something
Nice.
I throw on a lot.
Yes.
It's just super, like, in terms of CPU, saving your CPU. If you have a bunch of background vocals that you want going through something, just put it through RVox and it'll save the day.
Nice.
Yeah.
We have another question.
Yeah.
Is there a hand?
Hi, y'all. My name is Diana. Thanks, Hope, for being here, for offering your experience. I typically work in sound design for film and theater, so it's cool to see what other mixers are doing in different applications. And I'm really curious about like what your creative decisions were in response to how you wanted the song to feel. So yeah, I'm curious about like where you kind of just went, like followed your gut on a feeling and tried to execute that via sound.
I think definitely something for this mix would be just the choice to have things really ambient sounding, because a lot of the times it's safer to kind of err on the side of caution when it comes to reverbs and delays, and just kind of go with something that is maybe a bit more mainstream. But this one, we really decided to kind of go all in on the effects. Like, there's some weird effects in there that they just kind of added to I think the like a little bit eeriness of the song, and so that was definitely a creative decision. And I'm trying to think of what else. Got some things that are going on. I think another thing is just layering so many different kinds of textures in there at once, because the song itself started out as just acoustic guitar and vocals. It was never like a full band song, so we really wanted to keep it simple but also have a lot going on at the same time. So which is kind of a hard balance to find sometimes. I don't know if that came across. Like, it does sometimes sound like there's a lot of things happening, because there are. But I think one thing that was really fun was just creatively playing with effects. Like, I'll solo some of these. These are just happening all the time. You know, just some textures there to kind of help move the song. Stuff you're not necessarily noticing. There's also, yeah, some stuff there. What's going on here? Yeah, there's just some stuff to lift up sections. I think this one was just all about finding sounds that we don't usually use and kind of embracing them. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
I think one more follow-up question I have to that is like, why so many delays?
Normally, I'm not actually a huge delay person. That was just kind of what the song called for. Sometimes it's nice to have delays in addition to reverb or instead of reverb, because it's maybe not as present sounding when you have a reverb. Because of the density of it, it takes up a lot of space. But if you have a delay going on, it takes up space in a way that adds depth, but it doesn't necessarily overwhelm your ears, because there's a delay happening but between the dry and the first wet signal. It adds just kind of a layer that you're not necessarily hearing, you're just feeling. So I think it really depends on the song. Sometimes I don't touch delays at all in a mix. Sometimes I touch them a lot. It just depends what it's calling for. But they're definitely fun if you're going for an ambient sound to have just layers and layers. Just playing around with vocal effects, especially.
Very cool. Can you just quickly play the percussion with and without the effects?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Play it here. This with, and then without. could bring in one at a time. So this is a situation where I have a parallel compressor going on, which when we were talking about whether it's good to have compressors on the insert or on a send, I didn't mention parallel compression, which you probably heard about. It is a really great way of having, it's kind of like the mix between wet and dry, but when it comes to compression. So I have a separate track right now that's being sent to all the percussion stems, and it's getting compressed on the side. So you're hearing the totally dry percussion, but then you're also hearing a layer of really compressed percussion. So that really helps kind of, like I said, fill in the dynamic range. So there's a little bit more going on at a time, but you're not necessarily hearing the effect of compression. So yeah.
Is that the same as sidechain compression or no?
No, sidechain compression is when you have something, most often there's a send from the kick drum or something of that nature to something else. So if I were to do that, I would have an output here going to a bus. So let's say bus 3 or whatever. And then you would put a compressor on, let's say your bass, and then you would have your sidechain input be the bus that you're sending from the kick, so that every time the kick hit, the bass actually compresses. So the compressor isn't listening to the bass at all. It's listening only for the kick. So it's really good sometimes for things like that with that have shared low end, because if you have a ton of low end in your bass and a ton of low end in your kick, they're competing and you're not necessarily hearing the distinction. But if you have a sidechain compressor going on, your bass will actually duck a little bit when your kick hits, so that you can feel your kick, but you're not really losing anything from the bass. So sidechain compression happens all the time, and you might not even be noticing it. Like I would say 90% of my mixes have even just a little bit of that going on, just because it helps things share the same space without taking away from one another.
Cool, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How is parallel compression different than setting up, another aux track to basically like for your delay or something?
It's not really that different. I mean, they're both, parallel compression is done on a separate aux track. So in that nature, it's the same, but you're not hearing, since it's not a time-based effect, you're not hearing a different sound. You're just hearing another element of the same sound compressed more. So that way you can really, like, if you like the sound of something that's super compressed, but you don't want that effect to overwhelm whatever you're working on, you can really just blend in the compression a little bit. So there is that layer of it happening, but you're not hearing only the compressed signal.
Gotcha. Very cool. Do you want to talk a little bit about the guitars?
Sure.
What you did?
Yeah, so we have this acoustic going the whole time. And this one's actually similar to the vocals in that it was doubled super closely the entire time. And that's being panned 50% and 50%. So this one, you can see it's slightly different from one another, but it's still super close. We wanted it to sound like one part, but still human. Like, we didn't want it to sound totally robotic. So there are some slight timing issues or things like that, but that's the overall nature of that guitar. And then we have this really cool 12-string. It was a 12-string electric guitar, which adds a really cool effect. That's being sent to a hall room, and just a little bit of time. So this is an example of when I just put the reverb track right on the bus, right on the subgroup, because I didn't feel the need to send it to a bus. It just could live there, and I have the mix dialed back. So yeah, that's an example of me doing that. Then I have this other guitar that comes in the second verse. That one, I think we did a lot of processing going into Pro Tools, so there's nothing on it, but there's definitely things that happen in the recording of it sound the way it does. All the guitars together. And this one actually, you want to hear a weird guitar effect. This was actually done on a guitar, but we labeled it a seagull for some reason because I think that's what it reminded us of. But it does sound like seagulls. And that was made from a guitar and some pedals. So that is definitely a weirder effect. Play that in context.
I'm there for you. No, I never do.
Those are the guitars.
That's so cool. Can you go to the mix window and just kind of maybe play everything together? Like, just talk a little bit about your panning choices.
Yeah.
I'm there for you. No, I never
So like I said, I have the guitars kind of medium left and right. All my
try
effects.
my best to give it all to you.
Vocals.
I try to put words to your song. I give it all to see you smile.
Percussion, I kind of have a variety of ways.
I give it all to see your face.
Honestly, there's nothing crazy going on in this session. It's just kind of picking a spot for something to live in, and just, you know, keeping it relatively simple. But a lot of things I'll either have hard left and hard right in the center, or about halfway through in this one. You want me to play any more of that?
And yeah, I was just wondering the effects. Do you choose like right or left, or do you kind of always switch off, or do you
With the effects?
Yeah, do you ever ping pong?
I'm not a huge ping pong person. I find that sometimes it's a little bit distracting. I've definitely done it in the situations that call for it, but overall, I kind of just have something going to an effect and leave it at that. But a lot of the times, I'll send something to an effect as a pan. So you'll see that the Doombeck 2. This is the send to it's a double track, like I was mentioning before, for background vocals as like an extra layer. It's nice to have a doubler going on. So I was doing that on the percussion to kind of give it more of like a stereo image feel. And so I've sent that even though this track is being panned to the right, the send to the double is actually all the way to the left. So when you hear that, I'll play you with the double track and without. So you're actually hearing it on the right and the left. So I can mute that double. It's super subtle, but adds just a layer of space. So oftentimes when I have an effect, if there's panning on the effect, it's going to be going into the effect, not the effect track in general, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Do you have any favorite pieces to work on, like vocals and automation? Is that kind of where you get most excited about mixing, or is it just the whole?
I definitely love working with vocals, but I love working with any element in a song as long as I'm allowed creativity with it. I hate songs that are just kind of cookie cutter, and I hate it when there's like a sound that they're going for and it has to sound exactly like this song. You know, that to me is really limiting when it comes to creativity. So when I'm given kind of a blank slate with sounds and with direction, I think that's the most fun. So it doesn't matter if it's vocals or synths or drums. I think just the option to be creative with it is the best part.
Totally. I agree. Awesome. Does anyone have any more questions?
I have a question, but I can also wait if anyone else right now has a question because I've been asking a question. It's amazing how many hats you're wearing in this project alone, and I'm sure that's probably standard for you, just playing a lot of different roles, like your producer and mixer in this, and like, you know, in a way you're helping in such a huge way shape the sound for this band that you're collaborating with. I'm wondering, do you have a typical, and again, I know that like every situation probably calls for something different, but typical guide for the order of operations, like if you're engineering for a band or for your own music, are you did you like EQ all these elements first and then you go into like effects, or is it just like maybe they were already EQ'd? I mean, it doesn't have to be specific for this project, but just in general.
It definitely depends, like you said, but I tend to try to get things, if I am just engineering or producing or mixing, I tend to just try to get things sounding as good as they can just right off the bat. That way you don't have to worry about that. You know, if you can get a really good sound and then just be creative for the rest of the time, then that's awesome to me. And then you can revisit that when everything has come together production wise, because you don't want to do any crazy EQ things before the bass is there or something, because you never know what other instrument that you're gonna add later is gonna affect, you know, an EQ even. A lot of times, like an EQ that I would do is to compensate for something that's in there that's competing for space. You know, like I'll take the low end out of the guitar. When I was recording the guitar, I wanted the low end in there, but when I heard it with something else, I realized that it didn't need to be in there. So kind of a combination. If you can get things sounding really good off the bat and then just adjust with everything at once later, that's definitely, I think, the way to go. But when it comes to working on my own music, I definitely have a different approach, which I've noticed is interesting because as an engineer, I definitely get wrapped up in the technical sides of things way too much, and it sometimes does limit creativity. And so I've kind of come up with this technique for when I'm working on my own music of not even allowing myself to be technical. Like I'll have things sounding fine, you know, but I'm not gonna allow myself to go in and EQ my vocal when I'm trying to like come up with a part. And I won't even, I told you how like I love having an organized session. I won't even let myself do that when I'm creating, because for my own things, for other artists it's different, but for myself, I'll force myself to leave things called audio 1 or audio 10 and then not color code it, and then I'll spend a day later on, I'll come back and I'll organize it. But during the creative process, if it's inhibiting the flow to stop and name things or color code, then don't do it. You know, just wait.
Very cool. Thank you.
I had a question as well. I was personally wondering, first I wanted to know, because I know that you said that you had worked in the same room with Royal Blood. I just wanted to know what experiences you took from them. And also I wanted to know some of your tips about, because we've been recording a project that's just a duo project. And I just want to know personally what, just some of your tips or tricks to how would you attack doubling guitars with low end and just distortion, because I'm using a pitch shifter for low end and using regular guitar. And I'm just curious to know like what your tips are for doubling and for panning and just for layering. Honestly, it's for yeah.
Specifically. Yeah. It, like I said, it depends on the project in particular, but oftentimes if you're trying to go for a super cool effecty guitar sound, it's super fun to do like a pitch shift on it or an octaver, and then just add lots of layers. Sometimes I'll work in songs that have, you know, like 4 layers of just one guitar part, and they won't necessarily be audible, but they'll be panned in various directions so that it just sounds like the wall of sound, which is super fun. I would say that a lot of people waste their time doubling something when it sounds the exact same. Like for the most part, if you're gonna double an instrument, you should, especially except when it comes to vocals, I would say, although sometimes it calls for it, but you should try to get a different sound when you're doubling so that there's more perceived of a difference. So if you have the exact same amp, the exact same pedals, the exact same guitar pickup, it's not going to be as audible of a double as if you maybe change the amp or change the guitar or something like that. That really helps create some separation and just like different frequencies in the mix. So, or using like baritone guitar sometimes helps.
That's what I've heard the most. Yeah, especially when you're tracking or trying to mix with someone had one guitar that has a pitch shifter on and the other is just going to be a regular guitar. And I've heard a lot of things. It's like being really careful with frequencies.
Yeah, definitely. Because
Yeah.
if you're recording the exact same frequencies just twice, it's gonna sound doubled, but it's not gonna sound like an extra layer, you know. Sometimes like you heard with the vocal double, like the double doesn't have to sound pristine. Like there's this little mini amp right here. This is like a $15 guitar, like tiny little cabinet. It sounds not good, but as a layer, it's super cool because it just adds like such a different texture than a normal amp would, you know. So you just kind of have to get weird sometimes, like whether it's recording one guitar super close up right on the cab or recording the other one a super roomy version of that. Sometimes that's a cool effect. It just you just have to be creative and try to get 2 different sounds or 4 different sounds or however many you want.
Okay, awesome, cool, thank you.
Yeah.
I've been really loving the Neutron EQ for being able to visualize and see like cutting the mud especially.
Yeah, definitely.
And so for frequencies, is that kind of the main thing you run into as far as what kind of like confronts what? Is it mostly like bass and kick or creating room for low end of guitars?
It depends. That's definitely one of the most common ones and most easily heard issues, but a lot of times you really just have to think about what is conflicting with the vocal, because I would say 9 times out of 10 that's the most important part of a song, and if it's not, that's cool. There's probably other competing elements, but for things that are competing with the space that the vocals in, that's a really good time to use Neutron. And I don't know if you've messed around with you can have the Neutron on 2 different tracks and you can have the opposite thing happening. So you can be boosting 1K in one track and on the opposite track, it will actually be subtracting. So that's the situation. Like a lot of times synths really compete with vocals. So sometimes you really have to be aggressive with your EQs to take out the regions of the synth frequencies that are competing with the vocal. And a lot of times you just never want to solo things when you're doing that, because you would hear it in the context of the mix, because you would do things EQ wise in that situation that you would never do if you're just sitting there with the synth soloed EQing it, because you want to hear it with the thing that it's competing with to really do some really drastic EQ moves, but sometimes necessary.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then there's a question, have you used distortion on vocals? And if so, do you have any recommendations for plugin for distortion on vocals?
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes distortion is even like really subtly in there and you don't hear it. One of my favorite ways to do distortion on vocals is to have a really subtle slapback going, and then you put distortion on the slapback. So you're hearing the distorted sound of a vocal, but you still hear the dry vocal to have it cut, because a lot of times if you have a vocal super distorted, you're losing a lot of the clarity and you're losing a lot of like what the person is saying.
Yeah.
So if you have a slapback, like oftentimes I have a slapback going on here, and you can find that track. Where is it? And so yeah, I have this slapback going on, but then even in this plugin in Echo Boy, you can add saturation to it, which automatically creates some distortion depending on what style you're using, or you can just add a distortion after that, and you can really go crazy with that distortion, and you'll still hear the distortion effect on the vocal, but it won't be overwhelming. If you do want to just go crazy on it, then I say do that too. There are some really great distortion effects that I like. I oftentimes use pedals for that, or I'll use like there's a pedal emulation in the UAD plugins, which is called Raw, which I really love. Or the plugin that I keep pulling up called RC20 has some really good distortion things in it. Has different varieties of distortion going on here that sound really cool. Sans Amp is great. Decapitator, there's lots of them, but it kind of depends on the project.
I've heard about the Decapitator from like almost everyone is like the Decapitator. I love
cool.
that.
There are other things out there, but it's definitely depends on the mod.
Waves makes it pretty cool. I mean, as far as pedals and sims and stuff, that for not very much money, and you can subscribe and you can get a few things that work well, I think.
Yeah.
Especially if you're just starting out and trying a lot. it can be helpful to use those as well.
Yeah.
What is Waves?
It's a plugin company.
Okay.
They're kind of like, they try to be the monopoly on plugins, but they're definitely like, there are some great Waves plugins, but it's not the end all be all. There are other things out there. So I think they have really great things to reach for, but definitely explore other companies as well.
For sure. It's mostly like they're always just having sales.
They're definitely affordable. Like for Waves oftentimes does the exact same kind of plugins as UAD, and UAD plugins are hundreds of dollars more expensive. So it depends on what your budget is and what side you're going for sure.
Yeah. So on Gear Fanatics, Jam Phelps of Dank Studios, she actually does a weekly demo of a different Waves plugin. So if you want to check that out, there's like you can see kind of what you like or the sound or something. So it's kind of cool. Any other questions or anything else from the session that you want to kind of point out?
I feel like I pointed out most of it. I guess one thing I didn't is my master chain, which depends on the song. I may or may not have something going on there, because if someone else is mastering it, then I'll usually try to keep that really bare. But right now I have one of my go-tos, the Fairchild, on that. I have Ozone happening, which is good for a lot of general mastering things. I love the Imager, so I'll often have this is the bass frequency right here. I'll have that panned like even more mono than mono is. So because bass sometimes, like, to really hear it focused, you want it to be super mono. I would usually recommend against having a stereo bass because you just lose a lot of the focus. Usually I keep my mid-range in the center, and then my high ranges I'll have panned really wide, because to me that really opens up the mix. It helps with the depth of a song. Let's see what else I have going on. Some just EQ there. I sometimes have some sort of like a tape emulator on my master bus, because that just kind of helps give it some warmth and some extra saturation, just a little bit, like nothing that's super noticeable. And then some more, it looks like EQ going on there. And this is a master meter to help you see what your loudness is and what you want it to be. So yeah, that's it. That's definitely something that changes based on the mix, but something to think about.
Could you run just quickly through a little bit of how you EQ, maybe on the vocals?
Yeah, for sure. Every vocal definitely requires a different EQ. I'm definitely not the type of person that has like one EQ that I always do to a vocal, because first of all, it really depends on the singer, it really depends on the mic, so on. So this one, like I pointed out earlier, this one, I think we recorded it on a U47, so it's already a really great sounding mic. So all I really did was add a little bit of a top here. So I was adding some 10K with like a pretty medium-sized Q and just a little bit of it. And then I took away a little bit of 1.5K.
I will send flowers to your doorstep and send you love notes every day.
I really love this Pultec EQ for adding some top end, because it sounds super natural and it doesn't sound too harsh. Looks like I was also doing some stuff in Neutron. Yeah, so I was taking away some lows, taking away a little bit like just some harsh upper mid range and a little bit of the mids, adding a little top.
I will send flowers to your doorstep.
So yeah, I would say it just depends on the mic and the singer. That's always the number one rule. Any questions about that?
I think that sounds great. Any other questions? Any other comments? Let me see your Facebook. Awesome. Cool. So yeah, if you, let's see, maybe could suggest a few of those plugins. I tried to write everything down.
Yeah.
And
I can just kind of spiel off some of my favorites if you want.
Yeah, you could just shoot me an email too, and I can put them up in the group.
Okay,
and,
yeah, I can do that.
Great. But thank you so much for your time. This is it's so interesting, and it's really great to see inside a mix and see tools used and how they're used, and really go into some specifics of especially how to layer. You know, it really adds some depth to a song. So thank you so much.
I'm glad it was helpful. Of course.
Thank you.
No problem. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you, Hope.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.